The villagers buried her twice, and the second time was worse than the first. The day Adana died, the village was unusually quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that sits heavy in the air, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Adana was not a woman people talked about often. She lived gently. She spoke softly, and she never involved herself in quarrels that did not concern her. If you asked anyone in the village to describe her, they would struggle to find strong words. She was just there, they would say. Always present, always kind, always unnoticed. When the news of her death spread, no one screamed, no one fainted, no drums were beaten. People only whispered. They said she had complained of a sudden weakness the night before. They said she slept and did not wake again. They said death sometimes comes quietly to people like her. By afternoon, the elders decided she must be buried before sunset. There was no long mourning, no delay. Women washed her body with warm water and herbs, their hands trembling slightly, though none of them could explain why. Her face looked peaceful, too peaceful, some thought. As they wrapped her in white cloth, one woman paused and said, "It is as if she is listening." The others told her not to speak nonsense. At the burial ground, the soil was dry and stubborn. Each strike of the hoe echoed louder than usual, as though the earth itself was resisting. Still, they dug. Adana was laid into the grave just as the sun began to sink. The priest said a short prayer, the elders nodded, and just like that, the earth closed over her. That night, the wind refused to rest. It moved through the village in slow circles, lifting roofs slightly, brushing against doors, whispering through trees. Dogs cried until their voices broke. Chickens refused to return to their coops, and somewhere between sleep and waking, several villagers dreamt of the same thing: Adana, standing, silent, watching. By morning, footprints appeared around her grave, bare feet, facing away from it. And that was when the elders knew there was something wrong. But what was it? By the second night after Adana's burial, sleep became a stranger to the village. People lay on their mats with eyes wide open, listening to the sounds outside their walls. The wind no longer moved gently. It came in sudden gusts, slamming doors that had been firmly shut, sending dry leaves racing across the ground like frightened children. At the center of the village, the dogs gathered near the path that led to the burial ground. They did not bark. They sat still, heads lifted, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond. Just before dawn, one of the elders woke suddenly from his sleep. In his dream, Adana had stood at the foot of his mat, her white burial cloth stained with earth. She did not speak. She only pointed toward the forest. When he woke, his chest was tight, his wrapper soaked with sweat. By morning, more stories surfaced. A woman said she heard someone pounding softly on her door, only to find nothing there when she opened it. Another swore she heard Adana humming the same song she used to sing while fetching water. A child ran into his mother's arms crying, saying a woman with cold hands had touched his head and called his name. Fear crept into the village slowly, like smoke. The elders gathered under the ancient tree before the sun reached its highest point. They spoke in low voices. Some said the dead should be left alone. Others said the dead should not be walking. One elder cleared his throat and said what no one wanted to hear. The earth is unsettled. They walked to the burial ground in silence. The footprints were still there, more of them now, not circling the grave, but leading away from it. When one of the men placed his ear to the ground, his face drained of color. He stood up at once. "What is it?" another asked. He swallowed hard before answering. "There is movement." The decision was not taken lightly. Digging up the dead was forbidden unless the ancestors demanded it. And now, the ancestors were restless. As the holes struck the soil again, the wind rose sharply, as though warning them to stop. Some men stepped back. Others continued, hands shaking. When the first piece of white cloth appeared beneath the soil, a woman screamed. And when they uncovered her fully, the village fell silent. Because Adana's body was not lying the way they had left it. Her fingers were curled tightly, her mouth slightly open, and her eyes were not closed. The elders stepped away slowly. No one spoke, no one breathed. Whatever truth lay beneath Adana's death was no longer willing to stay buried. For a long time, no one spoke. The elders stood around Adana's open grave, watching her body as though it might rise and accuse them. Her eyes were gently closed this time, not by hand, but as if she had finally chosen rest. An old woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. She was not ready, she said. The words fell into the silence like stones. The elders examined Adana carefully. There were marks on her wrists, faint but real, bruises that had not been there before. Her nails were broken, her fingers stained with soil. And then they understood. Adana had not died when they said she did. She had only slept. The weakness she complained of that night was not death, it was the work of fear. Fear of being a burden, fear of disturbing others, fear of speaking when her body began to fail. They had buried her too quickly because she was quiet, because she never complained, because she had lived her life without demanding space. One of the elders covered his face and wept. Another fell to his knees. The village had mistaken silence for peace and patience for readiness. They buried Adana a second time that evening. This time, they washed her again. This time, they sang. This time, they waited until the sun had fully set. They spoke her name aloud, over and over, so the ancestors would know who was coming home. And when the earth closed over her again, the wind rested. The dogs went silent. The ground stayed still. Life slowly returned to the village, but something had changed. From that day on, when a woman complained of pain, they listened. When someone said, "I am not well," they waited. And whenever the elders spoke of Adana, they did not call her unlucky. They called her a reminder that not every quiet person is ready to leave, that not every silence means peace, and that sometimes the greatest tragedy is not death itself, but how quickly the living decide it is time. End.